discussion today. If you are new to my YouTube channel, welcome, The Dana Lee Project. If you are a return viewer, welcome back. Happy to have you. Make sure you subscribe and like, and if the conversation we're about to talk about today strikes a chord or resonates in some way, please comment below and please share the video with someone you think might benefit. So perhaps even the title or thumbnail of this video might have caught your eye. So today I have my friend slash client slash Dr. Julia with me. Hello.
Hello. Nice to be here.
So we are here to talk about her book. So yes, My Secret Life as a Sex Addict.
How I repair the damage.
How I repaired the damage, which is the most important part of it. It's not just the addiction, but how she pulled herself out of it. So we're going to talk about that today. And it was sparked because there was a book critique written on this book. And we both thought it was a very thorough critique. And we're pretty impressed with, oh, good, the doggies are joining us. We're pretty impressed with how it was just so thoroughly laid out. And we really enjoyed reading the critique and we want to talk about it. But before we get to that, I would love Julia to introduce herself. How is it she even got to the point to write, not only, work through and admit and start to work through the acknowledgement of an addiction, but get to the point that she could write about it in a way that, and I highly recommend you buy the book because it's a quick read. It's very honest, very raw, but this was a culmination of many years of internal work to get to this point where I think you birthed the book is really what it like came out of you. It was like, I remember it was like, there was no other option but to write this book. You had to get it out of you. So I would love for you to share a bit about your background and how you got to the point to be able to write and publish a book.
Yes. So my full name is Julia Bramwell. I'm a medical doctor, and I wrote the book under a pen name, Paulina Pantaleva. And this is one of the few moments ever that I'm coming out as one person, as my pen name and my real self, because I'm letting go of the shame and I'm merging my two selves to be more authentic. And it's the final step in letting go of the shame, basically. So my background in regard to Dana is that I came to her in 2021 for my binge eating disorder. And at that time, I was gaining weight very rapidly because I was coming off of a sex binge that was related to my sex addiction. And I was too horrified and ashamed to seek help for the sex addiction part. And plus, when I even tried to look online for therapists that could help me, I couldn't find anyone that I felt comfortable speaking to. And also I had been to therapists in the past. So I decided to address my eating disorder with Dana. And in the process of working with her for 6 months, she helped me with my sex addiction.
Yeah, and it did take a couple of months for that to even come to light where we even talked about it, right? If I
Yes.
remember correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the shame. Definitely.
Yeah.
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 Um,
And so I can understand that level of shame because especially being a woman, this is also something somehow it's more accepted or it's sort of like assumed men are going to have more, it's more common to have a sex addiction if you're a man, less if you're a woman. So I think that layered it where, it's just hard to talk about or admit to because of just judgments and not understanding.
yeah.
And yeah, so when we started talking about it and it was uncovered, well, first of all, we had a trust and we had an open, she knew that if you work with me, the level of your ability to be honest is going to be in direct relation to your ability to heal and actually change your life. And but when Julie and I started working together, like she wasn't fucking around. It was like I'm literally in more than one
Was trying to stop.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, oh no, I'm rolling up my sleeves and let's do this because I can no longer live with this crushing weight of these addictions. So yeah, so eventually after our 6 months together, when did you start writing?
After we were finished with our one-to-one sessions, and it many months had gone by, and I was, you know, e just reflecting on life and just kind of trying to still make sense of all the pieces and how everything throughout the years, it how things how one thing led to the other, or how things related to each other. So I yeah, it was another step in healing. It was like a type of journaling that turned into a book. And also there was a void in the world of books as it pertained to female sex addiction, because I was looking at what was out there when I was trying to heal myself and I was trying to find help for my sex addiction. And there were books from the male perspective. There were books by therapists about their clients. There were books by females who were married to a sex addict that had betrayal trauma. And there were maybe less than a handful of books. Like I could count like two other books, maybe written from the firsthand female perspective. So, and I didn't really align with them either. So I felt like I my contribution was something that, hasn't been done yet in terms of my experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I remember because we would go hiking together after, right? We're like hiking buddies now.
Mhm.
And I do remember like specifically on a couple hikes of like, oh no, like I have to write this book. There's this unique perspective. And I was really encouraging for you to write the book for yourself, if not for anyone else, because it really, you have a story worth telling. So anyone watching or listening to this, your story is also worth telling. First, you must tell it to yourself and
Mhm.
tell it to someone who will listen with an open heart and open ears in compassion and sympathy and empathy without that judgment. And I
Yes.
think that that's part of how you were able to get it out into the world because we had what we cultivated together that brought you the ability to be safe within yourself to share your story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also wrote the foreword and the afterword, and you lent your perspective on the story. So that was very special too.
Yeah,
So
definitely
it's
honored.
your book, as you know.
Honored. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I often like refer to as like our book. No,
Yes. Yeah.
definitely wrote it. I
Yeah.
had my um bookends of it, the forward and the afterward written. And I was just honored that you asked me to participate in that. Yeah, so let's talk about the book critique. So you kind of stumbled upon it.
Yeah, so the background is that after I wrote the book, I went to a conference it was the International Conference of Behavioral Addictions, and I created a slide presentation about my personal experience with sex addiction. And um, in the audience, I guess, where there are other scientists or researchers, therapists. It was the conference was more geared towards scientists more so than lay people. And one of the researchers took notice of it and assigned the book as a project to create a book review for the research students. So this article was written. There's three authors on the article, and the they are under the the head researcher who is Beata Bota, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing her name correctly, but it's you saw from the University of Montreal, and they are writing an article in the Journal of Behavioral Addictions, and they reviewed my book as their assignment. So that's the background of why it was written. And I came across it randomly on a Facebook post because I followed the head researcher because she studies sex addiction. And I saw my book review there without any forewarning, and it was a very fun surprise. So that's
Yeah, it's STAR, Sexuality, Technology, and Addictions Research Lab. So yeah, that was, yeah,
yes.
that's
Thank
for the
you.
research.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, so what I thought we could do is take a look at what they had to write from their clinical perspective as researchers, and then have, which would be, it would be really awesome if they could join us for a conversation at some point.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they will. So what I thought we could do is I'm going to read the first section of it just to kind of give some context, and then it's broken into how Julia has broken up her book. Does sex addiction really exist? Overdosing on sex,
My recovery.
recovery. Yep.
And then the forward and afterward they address.
And the forward and afterward. So what we'll do in today's conversation is to kind of break down each of those sections where we are in agreement and alignment, and then where there's a little bit of controversy. We're like, maybe, yes, we have different points of view, and that's what makes the world go round. Okay, so I would love to read the first section just to give proper highlight context to the researcher's paper. So they begin with compulsive sexual behavior disorder, also known as CSBD. Did you know that there was?
No,
I didn't know that.
Came to me like as a former sex addict.
Yeah, sex addict. No, compulsive sexual behavior disorder.
Yeah.
Frequently referred to as sex addiction in the general discourse, has increasingly captured the interests of the scientific community. Reflecting this growing interest, CSBD was included in the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, or ICD-11, which was published in 2022 in the World Health Organization. Despite the expanding body of research and its inclusion in the ICD-11, little is known about how CSBD is experienced in unrepresented populations, such as among women. What's lovely is there's also lots of citations in this article. So, you know, we'll link it underneath the video in case anyone's interested.
And actually, I was just thinking how recent that is that it was included as a disease in 2022, because I remember when my book came out and I would get book reviews just like on Amazon or whatever, one of the critiques was that, well, this doesn't even exist. You're making up a disorder, you know, that is not even like a medical diagnosis. So it really, and I can't believe like somebody would even latch on to that of all things, but it's a real disorder.
Yeah, that is pretty mind-blowing. 2022, when you even started, we started our conversation saying we began working together in 2021. So it's like you uncovered it, was dealing with, but this has been like how it hasn't been acknowledged before then is kind of mind-blowing. So this goes on to say, this gap in understanding is where My Secret Life as a Sex Addict, How I Repaired the Damage by Paulina Pantelieva becomes particularly relevant. This unique book offers a deeply personal and vivid exploration of what the author describes as her journey through her self-described sex addiction, providing rare insights into the female experience of CSBD. My Secret Life as a Sex Addict is structured into a foreword, 3 main sections with various chapters within them, and an afterword. It is a relatively light read, spanning roughly 100 pages, with large typeface and straightforward language. and some F-bombs. What sets this book apart is its unique blend of freshness and relevance. While the tone may seem light at times, it effectively immerses the reader in the intense, raw, and unfiltered reality of a woman living with CSBD. Its vivid content almost makes the reader feel as though they are experiencing the issues themselves. That style of writing and insights places this book in a particularly valuable for researchers and therapists, as it offers a window into the mind of a person struggling with self-perceived sex addiction. In return, it could provide the reader with a better understanding of the symptoms, mechanisms, and impacts of CSBD, particularly from a woman's perspective. It also provides insights on how CSBD impacts the author's loved ones, in other words, her husband, children, and friends. Additionally, the author talks about her other problems, such as her binge eating disorder and impulsivity and compulsivity struggles. Thus, it offers the reader profound and reflective insights that go beyond mere sexual content and illustrates how comorbidities are experienced by someone struggling with CSBD. Finally, the book stands out for breaking the fourth wall, directly engaging the reader with questions that foster introspection. In sum, My Secret Life as a Sex Addict sheds important light on the female experience of CSBD. The following lines will provide a deeper analysis of each section of the book, revealing the intricate dynamics of CSBD and its effects through the lens of the author's lived experience. So you're going to have to read the article for more details, but that's where Julie and I come in with each section. So where would you like to start?
I mean, we can kind of like go, I have it on my phone. That's why
Yeah.
I'm looking down, excuse me. So we can kind of breeze quickly through, the first two sections where there's less controversy and more
Yeah.
validation. And also I have to commend the authors of this article. The article is almost as long as my book, and it's just so detailed, and it's so like well written, and it imparts its own wisdom from the scientific side, with citations and definitions, and it's really well done. So in the first part of the book, which is entitled "Does Sex Addiction Really Exist?" the authors of this article, they gives definitions, like you mentioned, about what CSBD is, what binge eating disorder is. However, it makes me chuckle a little bit, and I don't know if I can find it, gosh, on my phone. Inability to control intense, repetitive sexual impulses, leading to prolonged sexual behavior lasting 6 months or more. Whoa, that's like definitely not what it is. But okay. But it's a good attempt at trying to describe what
Yeah.
it is.
Put it in a container as they like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, they make it about the the physical act of sex,
Mm.
which in my definition, yes, it's, sex is superficially how it looks. That is my drug of choice. But just like any drug, quote, it's the underlying cause of it is not the physical act of sex. It's the escapism. It's due to low self-esteem. It's due to childhood trauma, and all those things together make it manifest as a physical act of sex. But
Which is where the binge eating disorder overlaps, because one of the first things I say to my clients when we're working together is it's not about the food.
yeah.
In the beginning, it's like, what are you even talking about, Dana? It's all about the food. So I
Mhm.
can see that with the sex addiction, it's all about the sex.
Mhm.
It's like, so those things are very similar. It's not about the sex and it's not about the food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, so that definition definitely
Yeah.
cracked me up a little bit. But that the rest of that first section is very well done. It talks about how I link the sex addiction with the binge eating disorder, and that is, as I have learned, it's not unique to me. There's a strong connection between sex addiction and food addiction. Well, and in general, addictions do not exist uh, in a vacuum or solo. Many addictions, you change addictions. If you stop one addiction, it moves on to another addiction. It just keeps going until you kind of get to the root of what is causing this type of behavior. So they acknowledged, that it doesn't exist by itself usually. And in my situation, it really flip-flopped like very neatly sometimes, where I told uh, I told Dana that my first memory of overeating, like binge eating, where I was just like secretly sneaking food and like eating large amounts and feeling guilt and shame, was when I was about 11 years old, when my childhood sex molestation came to an end. I suddenly started to binge eat. And then throughout the decades, it would kind of happen similarly, where if I had the endorphin rush of acting out on my sex addiction, I wouldn't need to binge eat. But then when I felt guilt and shame related to my sex addiction, then I would have to escape that by binge eating. So they kind of went hand in hand. So that is what the first section talks about, like the definitions of sex and food addiction. And then they went on the second part of the book, which is the majority of the book. It's entitled Overdosing on Sex. And in that section, again, in the review, they reiterated that it was a helpful perspective for therapists, for researchers, because again, there's very little written from the firsthand female perspective. So it was helpful and insightful to see that view. And then they went on to critique the third part of the book, which is entitled My Recovery. And that's where some of the controversy came up.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, so the first thing I think that, Julie and I are in agreement on is the spiritual element. I think that's the first thing that little controversial, because as far as clinical therapy is concerned, they don't touch spirituality with a 10-foot pole. It's not in the realm of clinical practice. And that is where I have found the most healing is found. That's where it's discovered, that's where it's uncovered, that's where you lean into it, that's where you find peace and answers. So that is very difficult for me to well, this is why I do what I do, because there's a couple other elements that I bring to the table while I work with clients. I am not a therapist. Never claimed to be a therapist. I've never. It's not who I am. I am, however, called to do what I do, especially for the women that we end up connecting, and it's like, man, we were meant to connect, right? I also believe that's spiritual. So that part, and share your bit about, I mean, it's really the context of the entire book, that addiction is what?
It's a malady of the spirit.
Yeah.
So therefore the healing is spiritual. That's kind of like my conclusion in my book. And the reason why Dana was able to help me, whereas other therapists were not able to help me, medications were not able to help me, self-help books were not able to help me, online, fitness gurus were not able to help me, because they did not address my spiritual illness. So I wrote in my book that I experienced a spiritual healing, and it was one was before I met Dana, where it was just a random interaction that I had in a tailor shop, where one of the owners of the shop said that God is with me, and I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, but not religious. But even then, I definitely lacked spirituality. And that statement did not have much context until once I started working with you, and revealed some of the beliefs I had about myself being a bad person, and you completely disarmed those beliefs by putting it into a spiritual context that completely soothed my soul completely and healed me. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. And it was so wise. It was so like it was
It just,
angelic. Like I
yeah.
called it my earthly angel. And but what the authors of this article say in regard to that is the section provides readers with a glimpse into how spirituality can be integrated into personal healing processes. It presents practical methods for incorporating spirituality into one's recovery, potentially offering empowerment to those seeking spiritual dimensions of personal growth. Blah, 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 blah. However, the emphasis on spiritual insights may not resonate with those preferring a more secular perspective. Furthermore, the reliance on personal experiences can sometimes limit the broader applicability of the lessons shared. The pronounced focus on spirituality may hinder readers from considering other valuable aspects of healing and could alienate those whose beliefs differ. So they are not into this spiritual healing stuff as scientists,
Yep. Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Which so can you share a little bit about you had done a presentation at that conference, and you
Mhm.
shared how I love the example you gave of like going through New York City and you have a destination, let's say you're going to the Empire State Building,
Mhm.
and even if you are leaving from Jersey, where we are.
Mhm.
So can you share a little bit about that? Because it has to do with everybody's on their own path
Mhm.
to get to recovery. And so I just like the comparison that you use there.
Yes, so I gave an example that if you're going from A to B in Manhattan, you can you know, take whatever Fifth Avenue all the way down to your destination. You can go off on each block and go kind of zigzag to reach the destination. You can go all the way around Central Park and take a really long scenic route. You can take public transport, a bicycle, and as long as you get from A to B, there's no right or wrong way. It's your unique journey, and there's an infinite number of ways of getting there, just as many people as there are in New Jersey or Manhattan. There's that many ways to get from one location to the next. So that's what I presented when I talked about my personal experience, and that was an analogy to say this is my personal experience, and every person's route to healing is going to be unique and different, and uh, some will be longer, some will be shorter, but it's what works for them. So I think that hopefully, I mean, that is what I wanted to convey also in the book. I think we said that this is my personal story, and you can
Mhm.
go on your own story, or you can use the tools that helped me. So
Take what
that,
you want and leave the rest. And,
yes.
and I just, yeah, but this is just the truth of, and a component that's usually left out. And as far as, I'm a diet recovery specialist, and in my line of work, what gets us into trouble with dieting in our entire lives as women and diet culture is that it's only focusing on the physical. And what I bring to the table are the four components. So it's physical, yes, your body, your physical body, but also the mental component, the emotional component, and the spiritual component. I cannot take any one of those four away from the process. I've been using this framework for my relationship with food for the past 10 years. I use it to help other women. And now, like Julia found a way to apply it towards her another addiction, a different, because of that spiritual aspect that we weave in to help us understand ourselves and to create more peace in our lives. So,
Yes. So then then the last part of their critique was the forward and the afterward. And that was where they criticized the approach, of going to a coach rather than a therapist to get help for a serious decades-long addiction. So we know the truth. So you don't need letters after your name. You don't need, an advanced degree to help a person. So you have your lived experience, Dana. You have vast experience helping other women. All those decades of experience that you have were what I needed to help me heal this. And there's no therapist that was able to accomplish that before, or at that moment in time. I don't think that anybody else could have helped me except for you. So
yeah, I also bring to the table, I'm an open book, and a part of that too is sharing. I use my own life and stories to help disarm my clients so they really understand. I do understand binging. I really do understand, I had 2 decades of disordered, dysfunctional eating, binge eating, starving myself, all sorts of addiction with exercise addiction, hardcore. So I come from sharing a lot of, I'm transparent and I share that. That's something else that will be different. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, the differences between a therapist and a coach. I highly recommend you check it out. I will link it in this video. Because there are differences. I think this is one of the main ones that this work brings me joy as much as it does my clients. It's a very reciprocal relationship. Because I'm able to use what I've been through. I remember one of my mentors said, your mess is your message. And that was very empowering for me of like, wow, I didn't go through all of this crap for nothing. I actually can turn it around and help other women now. So yeah, so that part of the critique is I'm totally fine with. I feel very comfortable in what I'm doing, how I help. The book itself is the testimony of clearly, without letters after my name, it's profoundly helpful and changed your life. If you were able to articulate it in the way that you did and be able to talk about it like this today, clearly something worked in our method together, and I have oodles of client testimonials. Don't take it from me. Take it from the women who I have empowered. And I say, we are not here to create a codependent relationship. I know in the beginning you're like, but I don't know. I don't want to do it without you. But I say that in the very beginning, this is not a codependent relationship. I'm going to teach you tools and resources and concepts and really get your healing underway. So you don't need me. You don't need me. And therefore, that's why Julia, fly like a bird, and she wrote a book, and we will hike together, and we do other things, and we have another level of our relationship, which is so beautiful, even professionally. Your profession, my profession. So that part of the critique about being a coach, and I'm totally fine with their perspective. I think there is a place in this world for all of us, and I'm called to do this. I feel I know it in my soul. And so there's no one who can shake me from that.
yeah, yeah.
But I do respect their point of view. Clinically, researchers, they're allowed to have whatever opinion they do about coaches. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just protecting their institution and
Yeah.
the fact that they're spending all these years,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
studying and writing papers. And also like just, like I wanted to like tweak like slightly, like I didn't come to you for sex addiction. I came to you for what you advertised as your wheelhouse, and that was, relationship to food, women's bodies, and exercise addiction, all those things. So the sex addiction was just like healing. That was like a side effect
Yeah.
of healing. The
Yeah. That was just a like, yeah, side like delightful like uncovering of, oh my God, this other I didn't even expect to really touch
yeah,
this, I'm sure when you first went
yeah.
into it.
Because I wonder if I came to you and I ignored like my dysfunctional disordered eating, and I said, I have this like sex addiction. Probably at this point, you wouldn't turn me away. You would welcome me because you have your unique approach and your, four pillars of, healing. But maybe back then, I don't know, maybe you would say like, oh no, maybe.
Well, that brings up a good point. Just because we connect doesn't mean like I know what's in my wheelhouse and I am completely comfortable with making a referral for that person to go somewhere else, or if I don't believe I can help that person. This is a mutual relationship. There's no coercion, there's no like convincing. I do zero of that. I'm not here to convince you to do the work. You have to really want it, and it has to match on both sides. I've been doing this for 30 years, from fitness into and morphed into this part of my career for the past 10, because there hasn't been effective help out there for food dysfunction. Maybe I was never diagnosed because I didn't feel comfortable going to a therapist at all. In the fitness industry, it was actually part of that toxic nature to keep it in, like work out harder, eat less. It was like a badge of honor. It was very toxic. I don't know, I didn't know where to go or how to even begin to address that. And I didn't trust therapists. I'm just going to say that. And I will also share a lot of women who do come to me, they have a torrid relationship with therapists. So they have also shared with me that there are things we talk about they've never shared with a therapist before. Um, so my work is important. Your book and your story is out there is important because it needs to be for the person who is trying to find their way. I believe there's room for each of us, including these researchers, including these, these therapists. And a lot of my clients also work with a therapist. There's a lot of clients, there's overlap. You know,
Yes.
it's just you have to find your route to the Empire State Building. You have to find your route to recovery
Yeah.
and pick a little this and a little this and leave some of that and be willing to adapt and change and be open-minded and open-hearted. So,
Great. Yes.
all
So,
right.
yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, this was so great. I'm so happy we did this. And that you're finally like out from under your pen name or living as both. That's just yes. Another level of freedom, layering off, shaking off the shame of like, no, there's nothing shameful anymore. Like this is so relatable. And I hope I really pray the women who are out there suffering in silence find our video, and I hope it sheds some light. Please order Julia's book. Very easy read. And yeah, yes. Yeah, it's really a unique telling. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's punchy, it's crude.
Yeah. I tried to make it palatable,
Yeah.
like money wise, like
Yeah.
because otherwise it's just so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
So I'm honored to be part of it. It's been honestly a highlight of my career. If I'm honest, yeah, it really is. I'm like, wow, like, and then to have a book critique like this in a journal is even I guess icing on the cake with that. I hope it can reach more people and it's taken seriously, and your story is worth telling and worth being read and heard. So.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we look forward to hearing from you guys. So comment below or, find us on the socials.